This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Wednesday, September 19th, 2018. My guest is no other than Nicole Scott of Mobile Geeks. Hi, Nicole. How's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm awesome. So glad to have you on the show. Last time I had you on was in the early days of the show, and it was at Computex 2017 with Kevin Michaluk of Mobile Nations, Crackberry Kevin. And I've never had you on solo, so I'm super stoked that you were able to make it.
Yeah, and I'm actually in San Francisco and you're not.
Murphy's Law. Yeah, so, you are in San Francisco because of the Audi e-tron launch, correct?
Exactly. Audi's very first fully electric SUV.
I saw some great outtakes, by the way, was it on your Facebook or your YouTube channel?
Yeah, my Facebook. I didn't actually put those in the video.
It was totally awesome. I don't know if this was recording for yourself or if you were doing some promo work for them, but it was pretty nice. The lighting was fantastic.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty lucky to get the sneak preview time with the car. So they bring you into the studio before they kind of launch it. So it has a really professional setup, and they give you a camera person. So they kind of let me have half an hour to shoot the car. And I got to see all of the new features, inside the hood, and play around with that charging port, a super future the way that it opens, even though it didn't work for me a few times.
I mean, it seemed pretty standard and traditional. I was actually surprised that it was so simple. But anyway, I want your thoughts on this. As you know, I'm a Tesla owner, and I want to disclaim that because I have a Model 3. But I want people to know that as much as I love my car, I'm a car enthusiast, and I love the Germans a lot. I do have a Porsche as well. It's an older one. And I am very excited to see the German companies finally jumping on board with electric cars, EVs, and electrification is what I was trying to say. So, there's been a slew of them lately. Mercedes announced the MQC, is that right?
The EQC, yeah.
EQC, thank you, EQC. Yeah. And then there's e-tron just this week. And then, of course, Jaguar's the I-Pace, which will be the first to market.
Which looks really good. It looks
Porsche's
really
been working
good.
on
the Taycan.
Taycan, yeah.
Yeah.
So I want your thoughts. You spend a lot of time in Germany. You probably understand their mindset a little better. I know Europe has a very different view on vehicles than we do in the US. And I grew up in Europe. I was born and raised there. So I know how they like smaller cars. They like those chick shifts, although that's changed a lot in the last few years. But I'm just kind of wondering, what's your take on this? Because, I feel like it's exciting, but it seems to be just really baby steps at this point to me.
I'd 100% agree with you. I think it's a little bit conservative. The car makers kind of got kicked in the ass by Tesla. We have to do something. Okay, let's do it. Let's shorten our development cycles from 7 to 4 years, which is huge for them, right? So they're making massive steps forward. It's just Tesla's imagining new ways of manufacturing, and they're designing everything first rather than thinking about production. So they've completely switched the paradigm, and I think that the German car manufacturers came out with something safe that doesn't actually leave their kind of traditional footprint. So they're going after their current base. They're not going after the new kind of what are those called? Early adopters.
I think it's actually very smart of them, because it's important that, there's a lot of people out there now that I have an EV and I drive it all the time and people see it. I get either a completely fly under the radar, nobody notices. They think it's just a Civic or BMW 3 Series or whatever, right? Or I get the people who come up to me and go, oh my God, it's the Model 3. Tell me all about it. And we have this great conversation, right? But I feel that there's an entire population that's kind of in the middle somewhere. They kind of know Tesla exists. They hear all these rants and raves. And I'm sure they also see Elon's crazy tweets, because that's very crazy for sure.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan all the time of what's coming out of that guy's head. But anyway, the point is that I think they're aware, but they're kind of like, why would I, like, I'm a loyal Audi driver or BMW driver or Mercedes driver. And I'm, kind of waiting for them to do something. Right. So I think that's really smart because they don't want to leave their comfort zone. They just want electric. Right. But at the same time, I'm honestly think that by the time these cars are on the market and they're not going to be competitive, and what's going to happen is these Mercedes, Audi, and BMW drivers are going to be ready to buy an EV, and they're just going to go buy a used Tesla, right? Because it's way cheaper. They're going to be able to buy a Model S or Model 3 that's 2 years old with like 20,000 miles for, pretty much the $35,000 that the Model 3 base model that's not available yet is advertised for today. Or they're going to say, forget it, I've got the money, and they're going to buy a brand new Tesla. It's just going to bring more customers to Tesla if they don't match in terms of competing, right? And also, I'm not quite sure that while there is, I think, a segment of the market that's totally happy with, an equivalent electric version of an existing gasoline car, right? Which is what I think the Germans are doing right now, except for maybe Porsche. I think that there's a lot of people that, and I think this is where Jaguar has a bit of an advantage, that are expecting them to make a custom bespoke new car, right?
Right. So I think this is where we kind of miss the division between the way automotive people think and the way that the normal people, like the average Joe, might think. Everything that got launched is for the premium car segment, which means that it's expensive, that it's luxury, that like when they think about someone who's buying it, they're thinking about somebody sitting in the front seat going, but bam, look, I made it, bitches. Right. Like it's like, right. So this is the feeling that they're going for. Like they want like the influencers to take pictures with it and to kind of have that, like, look at the lifestyle that you're aspiring to. Right. Like, so in some ways, these premium cars are still aspirational. They're definitely not for the mainstream because like 80,000 is not a normal person's not buying an $80,000 car.
No, and that's totally agree. But my point is that if these are aspirational, right? If people are looking up to them, like if the Taycan of Porsche is really like outstanding, and I'm sure it will be, these people might go, oh, I can't afford that, but I can buy a used Model 3. See what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I mean, like if you want to take part in the electrification game, like you still have to wait to get a premium brand, like unless you want to go smart, which like desperately needs an update.
I think there's an in between. Nissan Leaf, the 2018 Nissan Leaf is a bestseller in Europe right now. It's the best-selling EV in Europe. It's not the Tesla that's the best-selling EV in Europe. So I think
Chevy
there's
Bolt,
some room for that.
Yeah, like the Chevy Bolt's also really great. And then
but it's not selling, right? Like they sold 100 units, I think, last month.
And the Volkswagen with the e-Golf.
Yeah, the e-Golf is awesome. I've driven it. It's a really nice car.
It's
if you like
really
golfs
nice car.
And you just want a Golf, but you just happen to be electric, this is the car to get. The problem with all these, to me, as a Model 3 owner, is the range, and more importantly, there's a cachet to owning a Tesla for sure. The cars look really sleek and futuristic, especially inside. But that's not the big deal. The big deal to me is the range, at least from my Model 3. It's the highest range of any Tesla, 310 miles. And it's the charging network, which I know and I have to give kudos to the Germans because of, especially Volkswagen Group, now that, post Dieselgate, they're really having to step up their game with the supporting, building a charging network. But at the same time, they're not even close, and they won't be for 2 to 3 years at the place where Tesla is today. So Tesla then will be even further ahead. And Tesla has openly, Elon has said, you can use our network if you just agree to it. Like it's an open source freaking charging system. Nobody's jumping on. I don't understand why they don't jumping on that. It's crazy.
Audi has come to the table actually with an offering that in Europe will be better than everybody else. So like they just launched their Ionic, I think, network, which will be the largest charging network in all of Europe. And the way that the e-tron will stand out from, or at least match what's going on with Tesla, is that it has the crypto chip inside the charging port. So like a Tesla, when you plug it in, you just get a bill at the end of the month. Right. Yeah, totally. So like at least the e-tron is like stepping
But
up
what I don't understand is like
in terms
why
of
don't-
charging network and usability.
at least in North America, why don't Porsche, like Volkswagen Group in particular, I can, maybe Jaguar is a different thing, Tata is a different world, but I think Volkswagen Group should just approach Tesla and say, look, we will license your charging technology and it's free, right? Like Tesla doesn't even want to make money on it. And then they can actually, just put that port on their cars. And they're done. They have an entire charging network accessible because in Europe, I don't think it's as critical. People can charge at home or in malls or in the office. And think in the US, so long distance travel is the thing. A lot of people think EVs are not for long distance. I completely disagree. The only thing I really use my Tesla for is long distance travel. I mean, I use it around town a little bit, but my Porsche is way more fun. It's a convertible 2-door. It's small. It's fun, and if I want to go for really long distance, long road trips, I use my camper van because it's a home on wheels. But the Tesla for like driving between big cities is way more efficient than flying. It's slower, but man, it's cheaper. $30 is how much it costs me to drive by myself from SF to Portland. And that's $30 in electricity, and it costs me $15 if I'm taking on a passenger, right? Like we're talking about the best possible flight rates you can get. So to me, the network is the only reason really I got a Tesla in the end is for the network and the range. It's not, the rest is nice. I love it. I love the cachet. I love the way the car looks. I love the way the car drives. I'm an enthusiast. That's the other thing. I've never driven any other EVs that drive like a Tesla. And I mean by that, like a performance car, and you don't have to drive it that way, but it's there for you. And I think the Germans will hit that. The Germans will do it, but the Japanese right now,
the Germans will hit that. Yeah, no, I agree. But I think one of the interesting things about what you just said is that you are actually most test, like the best test case for how mobility is going to evolve in the future. Like when we start to look at concepts of future mobility, it's no longer about one vehicle for like a solution. It's actually purpose-driven vehicles for different purposes, right? So you have the camper van, you have your Tesla for long distance, you have your Porsche for like in-city fun driving, right? And so like you are in like a very lucky position to be able to have all of these different cars that like actually fit these different needs. And this is what we're going to start to see when like someone like Volkswagen or Audi or Porsche, maybe the Volkswagen Group actually does a car sharing network, like maybe around like having a lease, and then you actually just order different cars for all the different purposes, right? So you get and so like in a way you completely get it, like 100%. But I still think that the position that you're in is a little bit far removed from everyone else.
It's crazy. I mean, I totally understand. All I'm trying to say, Nicole, is that I really honestly believe that if I had to delete all the cars and keep one, the Model 3 would be it today. There's no doubt about it to me. It fulfills all my requirements. Long distance travel, short distance travel. It's economical. Yes, there's an upfront price. Absolutely. It's not cheap, right? But eventually, and I know I'm absolutely certain that within 2 years, hopefully within a year, the Model 3 base model will be available, and it will meet that $35,000 price point. But right now, for what I paid, which is almost 60, 58, 57.5, whatever it was, I mean, I have never had such a good car as a new car. And I've had some really good new cars. Like I had a Golf R, which, as you know, is a phenomenal car. And it's a combination of practical. I mean, there's so many things. And so what I'm worried about is when I see the e-tron, when I see the EQC, and I see even the Jaguar I-Pace it's, as you said, geared toward premium buyers, which really, I think the Model 3, even though today is sold as a premium model, it's, if you go to the interior of my Model 3, it does feel like a $35,000 car.
Yeah.
Right? It's a nice place to be, but it's certainly not at the level of a $59,000 car. And I accept that because I'm paying for the technology, I'm paying for the batteries, and I'm paying for the performance, frankly, because it's out of this world. I mean, it drives circles around my Porsche, which even though it's an old one, is still no slouch. And I think that what I want to see is them coming out the gate with something that's going to be competitive in 2 years, right? And right now, we're not seeing that. I'm not seeing any improvement in luggage space, which you'd think as an electric platform, you don't need a front, you can have a front trunk in every vehicle. Mercedes purposely chose not to have one.
Yeah, same with the e-tron. But I think actually the concept of like you saying there's not more luggage space, like with the e-tron specifically, I was talking to the designer, like they gained almost 2 feet of interior space just for the passengers, right? They weren't necessarily focused on like the luggage. They were just like, let's give you like the most roomy experience, like this is a lounge, right? So like they're still really focused on the premium nature of the experience, which isn't where Tesla is with coming to market with like a mid-range car.
Yeah, and I think that's really weird because to me, the Model S is the premium car. If you want to get a premium car, and actually I don't think it delivers in that sense, and it does in the sense of performance and range and looks, but it doesn't in terms of interior. I don't think it even in the latest versions of the Model S and Model X, pale in comparison to anything the Germans do over 55, 60K. And they will get there. But I think the other thing a lot of people are not seeing that I think, other than, again, the charging networks, which, as you said, the Germans are working on, but I still feel that they have an opportunity that they're not seizing with working with Tesla on the network. And that's the fact that they're not really building cars from the ground up that can, really take advantage of the EV architecture. And Jaguar did it, and you can tell the car looks weird a bit, but it's really nice and roomy inside, and it's got lots of storage, and it's an SUV that's quite off-road capable, according to the people who tested it. Mm-hmm. Were you at the test drive for that?
The website was. I didn't go, but yeah, I think that the I-Pace is probably.
It's the closest thing.
Yeah, it's 100% the closest thing. But I think the one area that you're missing from the EQC and the e-tron is that these guys have paddle recuperation, right? So they have actually started to take, because like you've been talking a lot about drive style and like how like this car is like really built for performance, and I think that one of the cool things is that instead of using like the brake or the gas, you can actually modify the aggression of the recuperation system to influence.
You can on the Tesla too. Yeah. I drive with one pedal all the time. It's awesome.
With paddles on the.
Not with paddles. They don't use paddles.
Yeah,
it's just on the touchscreen. But I like that on Audi. Remember the e-tron prototype that was based on the Audi A3?
Yeah.
I drove that around San Francisco like 2 or 3 years back. I think even more than that when I was at Engadget still. And it had the paddle regen setting, and I like that a lot. I have to admit, that's a really cool feature. There's a lot of cool features they're doing. And I'm sure the Germans are wonderful cars to drive. I think that the ones that are not so much fun, I think, are like the Leaf. The e-Golf is okay, but, it's adapted from a gas car, so it doesn't have the batteries in the floor and all that, so it's not quite as much of a handler. But The other thing that I think is completely missing from the equation on the German side is that, and that's what I think we shine at here in the Silicon Valley, is it's an iPad on wheels. It's all about the software. It's all about the technology, right? The car is just kind of built around the technology. And the Germans are not building cars like that. For better or for worse. I think in some ways it's for better, but I think that I got an email from Tesla yesterday that said, you're getting a dash cam in your car next revision. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no,
I don't have a dash cam right now.
Yeah.
And I was going to buy one just because, safety. And now I don't have to because I get an over-the-air software updates that gives me a dash cam. Like I know the Germans will get there eventually, but right now the software is so way ahead of anything else on the Tesla that I don't know how they can catch up.
No, and it's the monthly software updates. I mean, like the fact that they're able to push those is better than anyone else on the field. And I hear you about not being able to catch up, but I'm still on the fence about whether or not I'm okay with the safety issues that are
the beta-ness of things. Yeah, I have had bugs in my Tesla. I have had bugs, and I report them. None of them have been safety and security related in the sense that I've never felt that I was like, oh my God, this is really bad. But yeah, there's tons of bugs. They're not egregious They're there. You report them. The nice thing is there's a button to report them, and they sends a log to them, even though they can access your car anytime anyway. But it's just the concept, like the whole idea.
Yep.
It's changed my way of looking at cars. It's like I'm amazed at what happens when you apply the principles of what we know in mobile tech, phones, tablets, wearables, and you apply that to a car, not just the software updates, just the way so many things in cars I love. There's a ritual. I get in my Porsche. I turn on the ignition. I check the oil quickly because, it's a sports car. I want to make sure the oil levels are good before I start. I start it. I turn on the lights because they're not automatic. If it's raining, I turn on the wipers. I have a whole routine. And we all do this subconsciously when we get in a car. We have to press the power button or turn the key to start the car. None of this exists in the Tesla.
Yeah,
you get in the car, you drive.
But none of that also exists in any other premium gas car. Right.
But you still have a power button on cars, right? Like,
no, you just drop the key in and basically go with some of them. They have the keyless entry. They have all of these things.
I think that like by default, all the automatic stuff is turned on, like completely. It doesn't reset when you change a setting next time you start the car. Like it is basically just, they're kind of pulling us kicking and streaming into a world where we don't have to worry about that stuff. Like, I just don't think I ever touch the light switches on my car.
I just disagree with the fact that you think that that the competition doesn't have that, right? Because in the gas cars right now that Daimler is putting out across their, like Audi, all of their high-end cars will do basically all the things that you're saying, like set the lights. They're high-end
cars. They're not. Yeah. They're not $35,000 cars.
But even the A-Class, the Mercedes-Benz A-Class will do most of that. Like you drop the key
most
in,
of it, but
like you do have to press the button on that one to turn on the engine.
It's further than that. I'm talking about the fact that there's no physical controls for the lights anymore. There's no physical control for the wipers. There's no need for it. It's done. We don't need it. It's over.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but to take it out completely, like just like not to have option to control. Yeah, but I mean, like, what
I
if
haven't used it since I've had my Model 3. It's been 3 months. I haven't touched the lights ever. It works.
So like, let's just take the A-Class for an example, right? It will do that in the iteration up, right? So like maybe not on like the base one. Like if you take everything out to get the cheapest car possible, right? They need to include all of those buttons, right?
Right.
So they're giving a price variation option for like their most accessible
when you say
car.
They need to include all those buttons, that's not true. They don't. All they need to do is have a touchscreen, have it all in software, and have no buttons. They save money by having no buttons.
Yeah, but
that's how Tesla is thinking.
Right, but I mean, like, but if you get the infotainment, so MBUX will come standard, right? So you can, but I think just like, let's just drop all the buttons just because we can, like, isn't necessarily something that appeals to the masses. This appeals. I
was against it.
It appeals to the tech enthusiast.
Turned around. I'm like, I get it. I totally get what they're trying to do. It makes perfect sense to me now. I get it.
The car will do it anyways, even if the button's there. So
save money.
Whatever, it doesn't matter. I mean, like, leave the button, don't leave the button. Like, you're definitely paying for it for like the software updates and the infrastructure, right? So it's not a money saving thing, right? Like the costs are just hidden somewhere else.
Manufacturing wise, it might be a money saving thing, and I can understand because Tesla obviously doesn't have the kind of manufacturing shops that the Germans have. I'm just saying is that I was pleasantly surprised at how my brain was able to adapt to this new way of thinking. And I'm not talking about automation. I'm talking about like the fact that the controls have actually been physically removed. And it really wasn't a big deal. And I can switch between cars now. It's totally not a big deal. I still remember turning on the lights in my camper van because it doesn't have auto headlights. I still remember turning the wipers in my Porsche. The point is that it's really interesting, the philosophical differences. And I think that's where the Germans are, I think, not getting the fact that it's an iPad on wheels software thing.
Yeah, no, so I'm disagreeing because like whenever I've done like a long-term test on like any kind of like Audi or Mercedes, I never touch anything. I have no ideas where those buttons are. So like to me, the philosophy of the car taking care of everything is already there. You're just kind of like picking on the fact that there's a physical button somewhere in the car that I have no idea where it is.
It's unnecessary. I think it's legacy crap. It's like, the iPhone when it came out removed a bunch of settings that we were like totally normally used to, and we are all really mad about it. And then we realized, well, we never use those settings. So what, well, who cares, right? And then all the other smartphone makers did exactly the same. So my point is, that's, I think, the point I'm trying to make. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I think for me, I was surprised that I thought it was wrong. And now I think it's right. And I'm also saying that I feel that this legacy stuff, if we drop, the sooner we drop it, the fastest we can move forward. If you have a button in the car somewhere, then your user interface options are limited because you no longer can change things in software, because if that button is labeled lights, how can you change the label? How can you reassign that button to be something else? You can't. So that's what I'm trying to get to, is that having no controls, having everything in software is actually an advantage because you can reconfigure the car. Like, there used to be a separate button on the touchscreen on my Model 3 for auto high beams. It's gone now. And for a while I was like, where did it go? I don't have it on. I don't like the auto high beams because I'm old school. I like turn them on myself, and you can do that with the stock. Well, I figured out that they repurposed the stock, and there's another setting on the stock now that lets you turn it on and off without having to go to the touchscreen, because they can reconfigure things because nothing's labeled. It's amazing.
Yeah, but like Audi and Mercedes are doing that with remapping buttons on their steering wheels now. Like,
yeah, I guess it's just on the steering wheel. They're not doing like the light switches or the switches in the center console. Like, a lot of things are still physically set. And it's okay. I've driven a recent Audi A4 because I use Silvercar, which is a car rental service that rents Audis. It's really awesome. They recently actually got acquired by Audi. Go figure. I mean, all their cars are Audis. And I have to say that the brand new A4 2018 model was, you're right, lots of automation. But I ended up having to fiddle with everything because I'm like, oh, what does this do? Because I didn't know. And I was like, oh, that's lane assist. Okay. Why is there a button for that? Why? And you never turn that on or off. Usually you just kind of, it's on or you're off. You might turn it on and off maybe between trips or something. It's just really interesting to me. It's like, do you spent money on that? Like, wow, okay. Like, it's an A4, I get it. It's a, mid-range sedan. I guess the A3 is the bottom of the barrel Audi. But, at least in the US, I know you have others.
I'll totally agree with you that every time I get into one of these new cars, I'm fucking around with messing around with the buttons for like an abnormal amount of time. And like one of the things that I've learned about using some of the different ride sharing programs, the Drive Now with the BMWs. Oh my God. No, but it takes forever I'm like messing around with the seats and the button. Like, it's a good thing the software is so slow and doesn't start the time for the rental for quite a while. Because I'm usually there, like with the mirrors, it takes me a long time. Whereas with the Car2Go, it's like everything's super easy and simple and fast. And it's easier.
I hear you. I've used both. Actually, Portland is the only city that I've lived in that has both Car2Go and Drive Now, Ride Now, whatever it's called. It used to be called Drive Now, and it used to be in San Francisco, and they couldn't work out with the city some deal where it's for free parking or something, and they completely uprooted the entire program.
They got kicked out. Yeah,
to Portland. Yeah. So back to the e-tron though for a second. Yeah. To me, what I like about it is that it looks like a Q5, which is a very elegant looking SUV. I know it's probably a little bigger than a Q5, but at first appearance of all the SUVs that Audi makes today, it looks less frumpy and smaller than the Q7. It certainly looks bigger and less silly than the Q3. And the Q5, I think, is kind of like the sweet spot in the range right now anyway. And that's, I think, what they're going after. And in that sense, I love the styling. And also I like the little things that, kind of differentiate it from its ICE sibling. If it is indeed a sibling. For all I know, it's a complete revamp from scratch. But if it is, it certainly doesn't look like it.
No, I'd agree with that. And then the way that they've done the kind of like the air grates on the front, kind of saying like, listen, we don't need so much air. We're blatantly covering these up to show how this isn't an air intake thing for us.
They do that on the e-Golf and a bunch of other cars too. It makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's cute. I like it. But I mean, honestly, I liked it better with the stickers with the camo. Like, I think
QR codes.
Yeah, like I think it really made it look like this is a car that's like kind of futuristic, that's taking on, you know what I mean? Like, look at me, I'm driving a new car. Whereas like now I'm like, this is a car. It's a car. Then that to me that's kind of the end. It's not futury like a Tesla which is disappointing. But then you realize they're going after their base, right? And they can't deviate too far from their core.
What's interesting though about the Tesla? I don't understand why people think the Tesla looks so futuristic. The S and the 3, the X is weird, right? I don't like the Falcon doors. I think it was a mistake. I think Elon now probably agrees it was a mistake because manufacturing this reliably, and it's going to be a nightmare maintenance-wise in the future. And I honestly don't think it's a very good-looking car. It's just kind of like a porky-looking Model S that's bloated because they turned a Model S into an SUV. But I think the S and the 3 are extremely good-looking. Mm-hmm. 4-door sedan type cars. I think they look like a very classy mix between Japanese and German design, because the chief designer of Tesla comes from Mazda and penned the Mazda 3 and Mazda 6 back in the day. I think they're good looking cars. And in fact, in some ways I find them boring looking. Like the 3, if a lot of people don't even know what it is because they just think it's just a generic, sedan. Yeah, it looks a little more upper class and premium and maybe a little bit fancier than a Civic would, but it doesn't look, honestly, that different than a BMW 3 Series. And to me, I don't understand when people equate Tesla with futuristic looking. It's certainly the sleekest car in the world today. The Model 3 is the most aerodynamic drag coefficient in the entire world, and some of that is probably reflected in the shape. But I don't see why people think, the interior of the Model 3 is insane. I agree. It's like IKEA insanity. But I don't understand the futuristic. The I-Pace to me looks way more futuristic than any Tesla.
Actually, agreed. I think the I-Pace looks much more futuristic. But just if you compare it to, say, the EQC and the e-tron, these just look like cars. Like, this is a nice car, right? Like, you're like, this is they're just like future thinking
mid-range SUVs. And that's the other thing I don't understand. I understand the SUV, the CUVs, modern car-like SUVs are very popular. I get this, especially in North America. I totally understand people like the high seating position, the cargo flexibility, all that. I totally get it. It's not my thing, but I get it. The most popular Porsche is the Macan, after all, right? It's a small SUV. But I just, I don't quite get why they would start with that.
Because it's the largest growing segment of the entire automotive ecosystem.
But by the time they release it, will it still be?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Because it's been steadily growing. Like the metrics and the numbers are there. Like this is the section that everyone has to go after.
I honestly think that once the Model Y is announced from Tesla, which will be basically the CUV based on the Model 3, it's gonna be a wake up call for these folks, because their aim today is to kind of match and slightly surpass. Match the Model 3, not even long range, because I don't think any of these cars have a range of 310 miles. But it's match what is there today. And once I think Tesla further develops the Model 3 platform into a CUV, that thing is going to be selling like hotcakes.
Do you know who I think is going to take on Tesla? Byton. I think. Oh
yeah, the Chinese. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, but the thing is, will they sell in the U.S. because of the tariffs?
They will not sell in the U.S. Right? So they're going China. They're going Europe. But it's the i8 team from BMW, right? And they know how to manufacture. They have their production plant in China is 3 kilometers from the new gigafactories that are coming online for EVs. I think this manufacturer has the potential to take over that position of we're a futuristic kind of part in Europe, because they're going China
in China, of course, too, right?
in China too, but it gets more interesting when it's
popular in China too. So
that's true. But no plans for the U.S. yet, right? So the Americans will be left out of that. But then again, this is the Tesla stronghold, right? So
exactly, yeah, true.
Take over where Tesla has yet to really kind of catch on. I think it's a good strategy for Byton. So globally, I have my eye on them as the Tesla killer.
I'm excited about the interior of the e-tron. I like Audi interiors a lot, and it certainly looks awesome. I do have to say that between the materials and the fact that my car is initially designed to be a $35,000 car, and the fact that it's so Spartan on purpose, which you can like or dislike depending on who you are. I still have mixed feelings about the Spartan interior of my Model 3. I have to say that the Audi interiors are very attractive to me.
Yeah, and
I'm
like
not sure
the way
about
that
the Mercedes
e-trons,
one or the Porsche ones, but the Audi interiors. Oh yes, please hook me up. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like how they've done that, like free floating, like spacious, kind of like airy thing in the middle. It's like there's a lot to love about the e-tron interior.
There's always a lot to love about Audi interiors. The thing that blows my mind, to be honest, though, and this is not just Audi, this is for all the 100-year-old car makers out there that are trying to be to electrify and are getting dragged kicking and screaming by Tesla into the age of an iPad on wheels, is that they announced this thing. The equivalent of their announcement is as if Apple had said, look, there's an iPhone. It's beautiful. You can take pictures of it. It comes in pretty colors, but we're not going to give you battery life, technical specs, or, anything else really. So to me, it just doesn't make sense that they wouldn't give us a range. I know that they are waiting for an official range from the EPA, but that's just a lame excuse in my opinion. You need, this is the quintessential thing about this, of the electric car. You need to give people a price and a range. Now they give the price. The range we're guessing is between 200 and 300 miles. That's a huge variability. 300 miles is today. In 2 years, when this thing is actually available at Audi dealers in the US, there will be Teslas out with a 500-mile range. Yeah,
no, this is going to be available Q2 of next year. It's a 2019
Okay, well,
release.
then there'll be probably a better battery pack available for the Model 3. Elon will surprise us, and it'll be 400 miles. So then what? That's what I'm saying. It's like, why don't you give us the specs today? That's insane. Nobody seems to commit to specs. It's like, that's the quintessential thing about an EV. You give out the specs.
Well, they have set a range. It's 250 miles.
Well, they haven't officially. They keep saying the EPA will confirm we don't.
Yeah. I mean, but
that's a guesstimate, right?
Yeah, but if you compare it to the numbers that the iPace and the EQC have put out, Audi is at least using the most aggressive one, really the most aggressive testing, which I think will show lower than what the EPC will show. To be honest,
I hope so. I mean,
yeah,
honestly,
Audis, yeah.
They get
so
just
I think
over 200. They're not competitive. They need to be at least close to 3.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing that I think is going to get interesting for me, is that at least the e-tron has this 90% regenerative braking statistic, which Tesla doesn't have right now. So it could really come down to the fact that the e-tron is a lot more about drive style and the way that the car is driven for range. So I think for them, this we have to wait for the review on that one. Whereas the rest of them, they don't have this intelligent, aggressive recuperation, which they all do, which of course everyone's recuperating, and Tesla's is very intelligent. I think Mercedes is as well, but I think that, I don't know, it could just be all pure bullshit, right? It could be, right? Maybe I'm drinking.
I mean, look, I trust
Kool-Aid.
Audi. I do believe that the VW Group has their shit together when it comes to making good EVs that are competitive. I just want to see the numbers. I want to see them come out of the gate with very confident numbers. Right now, 0 to 65.5, that's what my Model 3 does, okay? It's a $35,000 car with the premium versions on what I have and a bigger battery pack, right? I mean, you'll get 5.5 to 60 on the base $35,000 Model 3. Now, I know 5 to 60 is not something that's normally in the realm of $35,000 cars, but in the electric world where torque is everything, that's standard feature. So I would have expected this to be a 4.5 to 60 car for $80,000, like the iPace is. And, it's not about traffic light races, right? But at the same time, torque, it's telepathic in my Model 3. I see a spot in the road, I'm in it before I even think about it. It's amazing having that ability. It's going to be really interesting when everybody's got cars like that. I have a feeling a lot of people won't know how to deal with it, and there's a mode on my car to turn it into kind of like a less aggressive chill mode. It's called chill, actually. And I think people would drive like that because they would be freaked out coming from a normal gasoline car at how fast my car can be.
So here's regen. Wait. So here's an interesting point. I was talking to an Audi engineer, and someone brought up the exact point that you did, that it doesn't go 0 to 60 fast enough. And he's like, well, you know what the interesting thing is? We go 0 to 90 in less than 4 seconds. It actually takes us to get that extra 10, the last 2 seconds. So he's like, we're really fast. We're actually faster than Tesla, but it's just like to do this statistic of 0 to 60, technically we're slower. Right. So I'm like,
that's fair.
Right. So I was like, oh, that's cute. Like maybe you should totally think about rebranding. Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's Audi Quattro. I don't expect anything else. That's good to know. The point though I was trying to make is that, back to your talk about regen, the reality is I drive my Tesla like an idiot and I totally get the 310 mile range. The only time I lose range is if the car is sitting unplugged and you lose about 2 to 3 miles a day. Because it has to heat the batteries or cool the batteries or something, right? And that's normal. All Teslas have this. But honestly, when I drive, I get the 310 miles. And I hear lots of conservative Model 3 drivers, people like not constantly chasing the acceleration and trying to, steal those telepathic holes in the road of traffic holes like I do, that are getting actually over range. And so I'm thinking that, Tesla's numbers, and same with the acceleration, they advertise 5.5 to 60, but everyone has a Model 3. Even the non-dual motor crazy performance one is getting 5.1 to 60 all the time. So my point is that under, over delivering and under promising is really where they need to be. And Porsche traditionally has done that with its cars. Like they give you a horsepower rating and they give you a 0 to 60 time and they give you numbers. And then when people actually test drive them, they're like, holy crap, this is way faster than that. BMW is also known for that. So I'm really hoping that the Germans are underselling right now and surprise us because it's not about speed. You can get very comfortable transportation with 100 horsepower and you can get very decent highway performance with 100 horsepower. And you don't have to go 0 to 60 in you can do 0 to 60 in 7 seconds and be perfectly happy. But I think there is a certain standard and expectation now when you see what you can expect and get for that, for a certain price point and for a certain, in a certain platform. And electric cars are in a different world than gasoline cars. Like that's what I'm learning is that the expectations are a completely different set. And even if you eventually Toyota and GMs make, or Honda or whatever, or even Volkswagen, non-Audi, make affordable electric cars, and I hope they do soon, the expectations will be still very high for performance because of torque, right? So I think I feel that the Germans, again, they're taking baby steps. They're not really committing. If they were committing, we'd have a range and then we'd have a solid 0 to 60 in 5.5, but hey, look, 0 to, 50, 45 in like 3 seconds. So it's all about starting and stopping in the city. Why aren't they not really going out there with that? Like, are they shy? Are they worried they're not going to meet these numbers? What's the deal?
They've always been concerned. The German car manufacturers are like, the proof is in the pudding, right? Like they're conservative because they really just have to go after their base, right? And like they don't want to, like especially everything that happened since I think Dieselgate, it has made them more conservative. And like what is it? Audi's CEO is still in prison right now, right? It's like,
jeez, yeah, totally.
Right. So I think that everybody is just playing a really, really safe game, and it is a premium game and not a mainstream game. So
it needs to change. Huh?
Yeah. So I mean, like we'll get these cars like. They moved a lot faster, right, than they ever could have imagined. Sure, it's definitely not as fast as how Tesla's moving, but I think that Tesla has to slow down, right?
Absolutely.
In order to just like meet expectation, right?
Totally.
Like,
right now they can't deliver fast enough, which is hilarious. It's like, their logistics, they're still working out their logistics a lot. And I think, I waited 2 months after I placed my order. Like I placed my order 2.5 years ago, like my initial deposit. But once I actually got the invite to build my car, I designed my car and it took another 2 months before I got it. And this is a long time. I was very patient. But I get it. I just think that
it's too conservative.
With their manufacturing expertise, like when I see what Toyota and Volkswagen Group, which are the two biggest companies in the world, right, can do in terms of manufacturing, they would completely eat Tesla's lunch. Like they could reconfigure their assembly lines, make cars that are better built, safer, better interior, everything. They could nail Tesla to the cross tomorrow if they really wanted to. They're not trying. They're not trying. And I don't understand what it is.
I don't think that it's
about it.
I don't think that it's not they're not trying. I think that it's an institution that is so steeped in safety regulations and respect and reverence for safety that
and laws,
right? And now especially, like even more so, like let's make sure everything is by the letter. That I just think that they can't take on Tesla in the same way because Elon isn't respecting a lot of laws.
And guess what? I think this is the big quandary between large companies and startups, right? Startups break the rules. Sometimes it's douchey and I don't like it. I don't agree to it. I think it could be different, but at the same time, I think that it's the only way the only way you're going to move forward is to disrupt. And so some disruption I think is healthy. And I wish the Germans would try to disrupt themselves. They could.
Well, I mean, Daimler's going to be having a full flex plant come online in, I think, 2 years, which I think will help, right? So like full flex will allow you to have like multiple cars built on demand, like from the same production line. So like, I think this is a really strong start. And like the fact that the automotive industry is starting to look at this flexible manufacturing process, like shovels are in the ground, they're building it out. And I think that will come. I think it will come. But I mean, like Tesla's only been around, 7 years?
10 years.
10 years? 10 years? Right? And so like, it's taken them a long time to like, A, recognize it's a viable threat, and then B, get the board to approve movement. Yeah, you're right. It's slower, but I think
it's amazing. I'm
game.
Just saying that even if Tesla slows down to like 2/3 of its rate today, they're still going to move way faster than they are. And they're still going to be 2 years from now, they're going to be way ahead of where they are trying to be 2 years from now, the Germans, That's my fear, is that like they will eventually catch up, but it's going to take much longer than they think. And I hope they don't lose their market share.
So
at some point, people are going to just want to go on EVs. They're not going to want ICs anymore at all, right?
Here's my question to you.
It's going to happen sooner than we think.
Tesla purchasers still today are early adopter tech people. Right, like
look at me.
Yeah, I mean, and this is overall the kind of trend, right? Like globally, right? That this is the person it appeals to, right? So is it that maybe as tech people we're just a little bit blind to the way that a normal person might adopt a car?
Maybe, but I'll tell you this. I'm seeing so many people with, like, the Model 3s are everywhere here. Like, you have to understand. I don't know if you've seen it in SF.
Yeah.
It's insane how they're not just in SF.
This is the mothership of Tesla.
No, but I'm in Portland. It's not the mothership of Tesla. Portland is old and conservative. It's a very white city. There's only a couple of tech companies here, and they're not, they're old tech companies. Intel is not a bleeding edge company anymore.
It's true.
I'm sorry, folks.
Yeah, they're not.
It's Qualcomm, it's where it's at. And even worse, I think Kirin chips from Huawei are even more interesting. And I think what Apple's doing with the 8 series is more interesting, and potentially what Samsung's doing with Exynos and sometimes could be more interesting. So there's no, I see them everywhere, and I think I see the people driving them. They're old people, they're young people, they're not tech savvy people. They're just like, a friend
This is America, right?
It's word of mouth.
It's America,
a friend bought one, I drove it, and I was like, this is the best thing since sliced bread, and I bought one myself. That's basically what's happening right now. Word of mouth.
I agree with you that in the US, like the stronghold of Tesla will be difficult to break. Word of mouth, all of it. But I think that when Europe has a chance to roll out a strong charging network and EU legislation and laws across all the regions, I think that Europe is getting its act together. So globally, I think that we will see Tesla competitors, but I don't know if in the US it's going to be difficult to displace them there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just think that it's interesting to me. I'm surprised myself, even though I'm a Tesla owner, at the adoption rate and the kind of people who are adopting the car. It's way past early adopters and tech-savvy folks at this point. It's flipping right now. We're in the middle of that transition. It's happening. It's happening hardcore. We have people trading in $20,000, $25,000 used Priuses and 5-year-old Honda Civics that are worth maybe 10 grand if they're in good shape used, and trading them in for cars they would never have bought before.
Mm-hmm.
Like they would never have spent $59,000 on a car, and they're doing it. And the reason they're doing it is because they look at the savings over time, and the lifetime of an electric car is much longer than an ICE. The motors can last 500,000 miles. The battery packs can easily last 300,000. There's some Teslas out there today that are on the original pack and at 90% capacity with more than 300,000 miles. So there's nothing to maintain, right? There's no oil changes. Like, I think these cars, if they don't get binned into a tree because they're so fast, are going to last a really long time. And people are looking at it like, I could buy a $25,000 car twice in the next 10 years, or I could buy a single Tesla Model 3 for 10 years that will get software updates at least for 5 years and will cost me $58,000. And on top of that, my fuel savings, first of all, I never have to go to a gas station because most people in the US live in a place where they can charge at home. So I can plug in at home. And when I have to go on long road trips, I can recharge really quickly and it's not really slowing me down. In fact, I'm finding it now myself really relaxing because I'm forced to take breaks that are a little longer than I used to when I used to fuel up in a gasoline car. So I'm forcing myself to take a break and I'm happier because of it.
And how many charging points are at your long distance stop?
There's one at least every 150 miles on all the major highways and freeways. Superchargers are absolutely everywhere on the network. And how many
supercharging points are there?
16 to 20 at each of them.
16 to 20, and it's never full.
Never full. It's always like about the worst I've ever seen is about 2/3 full.
Okay.
It's really, and they're growing it. You can tell at some locations like Mount Shasta, where they have a parking lot with a bunch of chargers, and then they grew out. They didn't have enough. They have like 4 or 5 there, and then another parking lot just a block down the street, and another hotel where they have another 16 or 10 or whatever. Like they've added some, right? So you see that everywhere. Like it's growing really rapidly. And, 45 minutes to an hour to fully charge is not bad at all. And most of the time you're not rolling in needing a full charge. So I've topped off sometimes in just 15 minutes.
Oh, nice.
But I didn't need to, but I was like, I'm here. I want to stretch my legs. Let's top off, Sometimes I'm hitting the superchargers on purpose when I don't really have to, just because I want to just relax for a second and I need to pee and I can plug in for 10 minutes, catch my range back. The first... It charges way faster in the early part of the charge cycle. So like if you're sitting less than half on the battery and you plug in on a supercharger, you will get 100 miles in about 15 minutes. It's insane how fast it charges the first bit. Then as you get closer to your maximum capacity, it slows down. And so that's the other reason for cars with large batteries and long range is that I'm finding with 310 miles, I never fully charge it and I never empty it fully. I'm really just living on the 250 mile range, basically, because I don't want to have to wait for the maximum charging every time. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you have a car that only has a 200 mile range, now your real effective range is about 150 because you don't want to wait to charge fast, right? So that's assuming you have a network of chargers available that has super fast chargers. At home, obviously, it charges much slower, but
well, that's the same with the e-tron. It'll get you because it's one of the fastest charging batteries around. It's 150 kilowatt, and it'll get you to 80% in 30 minutes, which I like. Right? Yeah,
no, that's standard nowadays on all the anything that has a high speed charging infrastructure and network available for it can charge in 80% in very short time. It's cool. It's what really makes the Model 3 feasible. I'm in San Francisco. I can't charge it. I have a free level 2 charger very close by that's always really busy. So if I manage to squeeze a couple of hour charge out of that, I can, but it's medium speed charging, right? And then at home here in Portland, I didn't even bother installing a Tesla charger. I'm charging off of the 110 volt wall outlet. It's really slow, but usually for running errands in the city, the 10 miles I use up a day of running around are recouped overnight by super slow charging. So I'm always topped off, basically, ready to go on a road trip. It's totally awesome.
Yeah, it always blows my mind when I see people plug their car into a regular wall outlet.
Yeah, you can. It takes a long time, but it does work. Listen, we're running out of time. I wanted to kind of get your feel a little bit for this last week's iPhone announcement. We talked a little bit about it offline, but I kind of want to have your thoughts. What do you think of the new iPhones? And are you excited? Are you bored? What do you think's going on with Apple these days?
I'm so incredibly bored. I think like this, like things have been iterative in smartphone now for a few years, but I think that this is the first time where I'm just like, yeah, there's literally no reason to upgrade. Literally none.
The mid-range is kind of getting really interesting. I mean,
exactly.
I love my flagships. I'm very lukewarm about the iPhones as well because I feel they're very evolutionary. But then you have to remember that last year's iPhone 10 was a big step for them, and now they're back to their usual schedule of very iterative little changes.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But I think that the mid-range is where you should be focusing all the attention, because it's like we kind of mentioned the Galaxy A7 rumor with the 3 cams. This is like okay, like a mid-range phone getting this kind of stuff. So
that's interesting because that's one of the items on our podcast topics. I'll be linking to it below in the show notes. Do you think that's happening? Like, are they going to come out with a triple camera Galaxy that's not an S-Class flagship before the S-Class flagship gets it?
You know, I wouldn't put it past them with the fact that they've been having declining S9 sales, and the Note 9, though, I love it, and I think is an amazing phone. I think that their strategy could be, okay, let's try to get things back in the mid-range and like treat this as our new flagship category, because they've been losing sales on the high end. So I think maybe Samsung is an aggressive company enough to kind of just go, all right, then let's just treat the mid-range like a flagship.
I think you make a good point. Yeah, I do believe that the A series is totally underrated. It's always been great.
Yeah, it's always been great.
We don't get it here in the US. I think we just got the A6 was announced to finally make it to the US market. We've gotten the J series a little bit, but I know in Europe the A series is super popular. I was in
it's wonderful.
Croatia in January, and I saw a whole bunch of A series Galaxies, and I was like, oh, that's a thing here. Awesome.
Yeah, it's totally a thing in Europe, and it's performing really well. And I have a hard time. I end up suggesting the A series over the S series just because people are like, oh, it's expensive. I'm like, I feel you. Just get the A series, then you'll be happy. Because it's like an S7. Yeah, and that was a great phone.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that you're right. I mean, not just the mid-range specs, but also the mid-range premium, and is a big thing with the OnePlus really kind of championing this, at least in this market. I know there's other players. I know Honor is in there. I know that, of course, in China there's a whole bunch of players in there. Oppo does a great mid-range phone, of course. But I'm kind of curious. You were at EFI. You probably got a chance to play with the Honor Play. I just got a review in it. So now I'm basically rocking a Note 9, Honor Play, and that's it for my current review units. Anyway, I'm impressed that the phone is less than $300 and has a Kirin 970. Spec-wise, it's very much like the Pocophone F1 in a way. It's like they cut some corners, like the camera is okay but not great. But they put the best processor that they could in that thing so that it's fast and it's, they're kind of gearing it towards gaming. What's your take on that approach?
So people aren't going to upgrade their phones every year anymore because it's just too iterative. But people are in the habit, right, of upgrading their phones. They have been, a lot of people have been. And I think that these purpose-driven phones, like the gaming phone, the Play, right, or like the Razr, right, that these will be phones that people will choose to upgrade to if they just kind of want to switch things up. If they've been buying Samsung Galaxies for the past few years, and they're like, oh, yeah, right. Let's switch it up to a gaming phone, because I think some people don't use the camera, right, and it's just not a thing for them. And like maybe they really got into Fortnite, and now they just want to play, right?
And now you need something with horsepower, and less than $300 buys you that and a beautiful screen to go.
Yeah, so I think that people who still want to upgrade are looking for excuses. So these kind of like purpose-specific phones are perfect. Totally perfect for that.
It's funny because the Honor Play, when I saw, that it was announced, I didn't put it together. It was a gaming phone, basically. What I thought was like, it's just a cheap phone with high specs. And I've treated it like that. And honestly, it's a great phone for the money.
Yeah.
I'm totally stupid. I didn't figure it out. I'm sorry. Now I have. But But honestly, it doesn't feel to me like a gaming phone. It just feels like a really affordable phone with super high-end specs, basically like the Poco Phone F1. And I'm surprised there's little people talking about it. I think it's getting overshadowed by the rumors of the Magic 2, which is supposed to be 100% screen to body ratio. How is that possible? There's no bezel at all?
Well, so that I think is totally crazy. But where the Magic gets me really interested is that this is supposed to be their very first AI only phone. And I was like, what does that even mean?
Does that mean?
I'm like,
there's no CPU and GPU, everything is an NPU now.
But like at the same time, like you can't really knock Huawei and their prowess and all of this kind of like manufacturing. So if they are going to put out a phone that maybe has like a playful take on them trying some new stuff before they put it out into their flagship, I don't know, like that like I don't know if I'm right, but that's something that I'm thinking about this. I mean, like the screen to body ratio thing, I'm like, okay, so maybe there's no bezel, which means it's a disaster and I'm going to break it, so I can't own it. But like, but now I want to review it because if they've made it like a huge AI focus, more so than any other phone on their platform, then I have to pay attention. That's the one. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Honor phones. I think that they're really good value and pretty solid phones for the money. And of course, Huawei makes some great phones, the P20 Pro this year. And the Mate 20 is coming up. I'll be in London for that, so I'm looking forward to it. But, you know, I reviewed briefly, there's a video on my channel, I'll link to it in the show notes, the original Magic, which never made it to the US. I just got my hands on one for a little while. And, you know, looking back in 2018 at this phone that was launched in 2015, 16, whatever it was super innovative for the time. And of course, it didn't have much traction, but it was very sleek, very aesthetically interesting, and super high spec for its time. And so I'm really looking forward basically to the Magic 2, because I think it's going to be basically the flagship Honor phone for a little while. In more than, let's say, the Honor 10 or Honor 8 were in their time, meaning they were kind of considered the flagship because they were the higher range of Honor pricing, but they weren't really flagship in the sense that they were pretty much decontented Huawei phones, right? The Honor 10 is a P20 Pro, or sorry, P20 regular, basically. So the Magic is a purpose-built from scratch for Honor device. So was the original Magic. So I'm really looking forward to the Magic. I think it's going to be great.
So we
won't get it here, by the way.
Yeah, so this is one of the things that I don't follow so closely because I'm not based in the US. You guys have no problem getting Honor, but you can't get Huawei?
Well, we can get both. They're available on Amazon.
Okay.
And I believe that Honor's the only one that has its own store in the US.
Okay.
And sells hihonor.com, whatever. And I don't know why. I think that, you know, Huawei right now is a name you want to avoid saying in a federal building.
Yeah.
I'm joking, but it really feels like that. It's just like this weird thing with our crazy regime right now.
Well, yeah, because I mean, like,
don't say Huawei at the airport, guys. Okay, like
because
it's not going to end well.
Being a more European focused website a little bit, I've noticed the Huawei reorg right in Europe. Right,
it's amazing what they're doing.
They've completely reorganized in order to like change their European strategy because apparently they're moving a lot of their advertising dollars to Europe from the US. And I'm like, oh, that's good. I don't blame them. Good for me, but like, wait, what? The US isn't getting any of this.
but Honor kind of stole a chunk of the market here, a small chunk, kind of like OnePlus, and has a pretty strong following, and they sell, you know, unlocked online at really affordable prices, kind of like Huawei Redux, and people like them for that. And I hope they can stick around, and that, you know, even though they're owned by Huawei, that it doesn't, you know, if you say I have an Honor phone, you won't get stopped at the airport. But if you say, you know, I'm joking, but you know what I'm saying. There's a stigma around the Huawei and the ZTE names now, and it's like, what? Are you kidding me? This is ridiculous.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So you know, other things, I can't remember what I had in my show notes, but I believe there was something about a basic phone in there.
Yeah, and I saw that this punked MP02, and you know, I was reading the article, and I was like, you know what, I would get a Nokia 8810 over this one.
Yeah, exactly. I would get the banana phone any day over this thing.
Any day.
I only brought it up is because this particular TechCrunch article that I'll link into in the show note that discuss this version 2 of the punked phone Punkt or whatever. It's probably the word German Punkt, which means a period, like dot.
Yeah.
I think that the reason is interesting is because they talk about the other super minimalistic phone in that article. So I'm like, oh, that phone. And let me bring up the article to tell you what I was talking about. But basically what I'm saying is that I think there's a need out there for a basic phone you take with you, but I don't think this Punkt or even the 8110 is the solution. The phone they're talking about is the Light Phone 2. Light Phone 1 was basically a dumb phone, but Light Phone 2 was going to have an e-ink touchscreen. And to me, I would love a phone that I could take with me that would allow me to do messaging on a touchscreen, and multiple kind of messaging like Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, WeChat, Twitter messaging, Skype messaging, text messaging, and that would probably be it for me. But maybe Hangouts, and lets you do that, and at the same time, it calls, but it has minimal functionality. Like, it has a good camera, so you can take photos. They're synced to the cloud automatically. You can select which service they sync to, and have navigation and maybe Lyft and Uber on there, or Didi. That's a phone I would like to see. But I wouldn't want to be able to install apps on it. You know what I'm saying? And I wouldn't necessarily need a color screen, but I would need a touch screen and a keyboard that's QWERTY and usable. And of course, the problem with doing a phone like that, if the camera is any good, and really it's a smartphone redux, it wouldn't be necessarily much cheaper. So I'm not necessarily expecting the price to be lower. I just want something cool and interesting that I can take with me on the weekends and not have to worry about too much distraction, but still be able to communicate with people. You know what I'm saying?
So that's funny. I have the banana phone as my secondary phone, or my third phone, actually, right now. And I don't look at it as my weekend phone. I look at it as my night out phone, right? Yeah. So like when I go out for a night, I still need maps, right? You're right. I'm missing Uber, right? And that's the one. But like I have maps, and actually the Google Assistant on it's super strong, right? So like I don't need to like press buttons or anything. I just hit Google Assistant, and then I talk to it, and then it tells me everything that I need to know, right? So I'm still getting the
Google
information
Assistant
and the
would be
access.
totally awesome on that. Yeah, absolutely.
It's true. I'm just missing a WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, like these like just messaging
and yes,
apps.
You're right. Weekend phone is not the right. I totally was thinking more night out phone. Yeah, I get it. Totally agree. So I think for me, I'm kind of like been toying with the idea of creating a startup that makes that phone.
It's not a bad idea.
Because I'm crazy. Because I'm, in my late 40s now. Maybe I should start my own company. I don't know. I kind of want somebody to do it right. And the closest best thing would be a small, really high spec Android phone. But nobody's doing that right now. Nobody's making a small, really high spec Android phone that doesn't compromise on imaging, which is the big deal, right? So I don't know. Pixel 2 is probably the closest thing to that right now. It's a small, doesn't compromise imaging, and you could potentially restrict it by not installing the apps you don't want. But then it's still Android, and then you're tempted to do it and use it as a smartphone. I want something with e-ink. I want something super good battery life, super slim. That would, and maybe it would be expensive and premium, but it would have a cachet to it. I don't know. This is kind of what I
think it's actually a really good idea, and the fact that like maybe not today, but in a few years, when eSIM is like more of a thing in our real handsets, that we could have two phones with the same SIM, and then I won't have to like mess around, and then like I just grab this other phone that's like less connected, and then I go for my evening out, or I go for my weekend away, but I'm still able to get around and to have basic communication. I think it's a really good thing, like to have like once we're at that level where we're like just seamlessly getting our basic information between like even our car, our Lenovo Smart Display in our kitchen, right? Like when like that kind of like ubiquitous platform is like a lot more developed, and then we have our purposeful devices that limit our addictions, then I think we're there.
It's such a first world problem. I mean, like, it's like I have multiple cars for the different things I like to do, and soon I'm going to want multiple phones for the things I want to do. Such decadence, Nicole.
Yeah, no, my biggest first world problem is that I have trouble finding my micro USB cable to charge my headphones.
Oh my God, you're so right. Speaking of which, 2 devices are landing in my lap today. One is the Galaxy Watch, finally getting one of those.
Oh, cool.
And then the other one is the new Sony Mark III noise canceling headphones that have USB Type-C on them.
Finally.
And supposedly sound amazing, have great noise reduction, are super comfortable, have great battery life, totally kick Bose's ass, which I think is necessary because I've never been able to use the Boses because their sound quality just doesn't live up to my expectations. So I'm really looking forward to putting these Sony headphones through their paces. But yeah. Before we close out, I want to kind of give you my thoughts on the iPhone real quick. I think the XR is the interesting one to me, not because it's particularly cheap. I mean, it's cheaper, but because I want to see what kind of compromises Apple made to get there from the iPhone SX, XS, or XS, 10S. Oh God, these names. What were they thinking, Nicole?
Yeah. Yeah,
Right?
I mean, the biggest downside to getting the Max is that you'd have to say that entire thing.
I know. The 10R I think is really interesting to me because the colors and because to see what they compromise and also what they're able to achieve with that single camera that, just like on the Pixel, can do depth sensing through its dual pixel autofocus system. I'm kind of stoked about that. And then the S models and the S Max I think are essentially what you expect from an S model, like just a improvement in many ways. It sounds like the imaging has really been improved, but at the same time, it hasn't been improved enough to catch up with the Pixel 2 yet, according to a lot of the reviewers I've talked to.
Agreed.
Particularly the folks at The Verge, which I really trust with this stuff. And that means that the Pixel 3, which I'll be in New York for launching on October 9th, might reset the clock again for everyone in terms of imaging. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, no, I'm legitimately only excited about the Pixel. This is the one that I'm like. 'Cause like there's so many smartphones coming out, like, or that have come out over the last few months, and like, for me, they're the only ones that are genuinely pushing the benchmark when it comes to ubiquitous experience. Because, like, yeah, the imaging is amazing, of course, but at the same time, like, the average person isn't going to notice as much as we will. This like 10% increase.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so like, because we're on 2-year upgrade cycles in general for phones now, like, it's just like, well, I like as a reviewer, of course, I love it. You know, if you're buying a new phone, of course you should get that. But the way that the Google ecosystem is developing and the way that the Pixel phones are kind of at the center of leading that mobility issue is why I'm always curious about the Pixel launches. So for me, like, Samsung was like, great, we have the Note 9.
Yeah,
it exists
exactly.
in this ecosystem, sort of with DeX, but like, where's it going from there? Right?
Bixby button.
Bixby button, la la la, right? So then you're just like, wait, but then Google actually has an entire platform that goes into autonomous drive and smart home, and like, so I'm curious.
I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan.
Even though the OnePlus 6 almost dethroned my Pixel 2 XL out of my pocket this year, it's still Pixel all the way for me, and I can't wait to get my hands on the 3 XL. I don't want the 3. Just the 3 XL, even though the notch looks atrocious. I understand, I agree. It's whatever, I'll live with it. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm rocking the OnePlus 6. That's my go. Yeah,
it's a great phone.
Because I got it in red.
I can't wait for the
Beautiful.
6T.
Yeah,
I got the red and the white and the black. I got all 3.
Oh, you got all 3?
White is my favorite, I think. Red is pretty awesome.
Oh, it's beautiful.
I'm looking forward to the 6T, but the lack of headphone jack is just pissing me off. I know it's not necessary for a lot of people, but
I'm really hoping that that everyone misread that photo and they're putting it in, not taking it out.
No, I think we'll see what happens. Anyway, do you want to tell people where they can find you online?
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter, Nicole_scooter, and I'm writing on mobilegeeks.com and mobilegeeks.de.
Yeah, German. If you want to, get better at German, go read Nicole's stories on mobilegeeks.de. Do you want to plug maybe your Instagram, YouTube channel, Facebook, anything like that?
Yeah, you can still, on YouTube, it's mobilegeeks.de, and then Instagram is Nicole's Cooter, because there's no hyphen in there, or underscore.
And you're a world traveler. I believe right now you're kind of roaming free in the universe.
Yeah, I'm hobo chic at the moment. Yeah, I'm totally homeless. Yeah.
It's kind of awesome. I hope it's awesome for you. It sounds awesome.
It is. I'm spending
two
two weeks here in San Francisco. I'll do Dreamforce next week. Then I go down to LA to work from there for a little bit.
Nice.
Yeah, and then I head back to Germany for hydrogen fuel cell drive. Because
I just drove the Toyota Mirai.
Yeah, I was super bummed that I couldn't join you guys on that drive. I'm really looking forward to watching your video with Mr.
I need
Mobile.
to edit that still. Yeah, and Mr. Mobile has something as well, so you guys should keep an eye out for that, Michael Fisher.
Yeah.
You folks know where to find me. I'm at Tank Girl on Twitter. That's TNKGR. I like the comic book character Tank Girl without the vowels. That's also my Instagram handle. You also can find me on Facebook under that handle. And the only place I couldn't get the handle was YouTube. So it's youtube.com/Miriam Jouar, my full name spelled out, Miriam with a Y. That's where you'll find some complimentary videos to this podcast, unboxings, hands-on, some reviews every now and then. They're very kind of low budget, but I like to keep it simple, and most of them are live, which is fun. Watch that, subscribe to the channel, like the videos, and don't forget, if this is your first time on the podcast, mobiletechpodcast.com. Tell your friends, subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Overcast, Stitcher, Slacker, TuneIn Radio, everywhere. So look for Mobile Tech Podcast if you can't find it, because it pings a lot of search terms. Add Tankgirl, TNKGRL to that, and you'll be there. I also want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Audible.com. Audible is the place to go for audiobooks. This is where you want to get all your audiobook needs. So, join if you haven't already. There's a link in the show notes below. It's audibletrial.com/mobiletech. That's audibletrial.com/mobiletech. You'll find some ways to support the podcast if you haven't subscribed to Audible yet. And I want to thank Audible for being a sponsor, and I want to thank you, Nicole, for being on the show. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was great. I need to have you come back more, and we can duke it out about EVs and smartphones any day of the week. It's so great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sweet. Well, stay tuned, folks. We'll have another show next week, and thanks again for tuning in. Cheers, everybody.
Bye.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.